All right, let's get signed in and then we'll hop into Matrix and we'll talk about some of the introductory elements of our advanced class today, some of the things that we'll need to be mindful of for our advanced features. There are going to be some things that we're covering in this Matrix portion today that some of you may not have used or been exposed to. Is there anyone that is new to real estate today? Normally, I'll throw up a poll and ask questions and everything like that to kind of just gauge where everyone is at in their career walk here, but um, not seeing anyone respond on that one. So we'll assume that everyone here is pretty familiar with the basic level of Matrix. There isn't a prerequisite for this class, so it's not required for you to have taken our basic usage class, though it is going to assume some things about your navigational abilities within Matrix. So I'm going to hop into Matrix here from the MLS portal, and we're going to get started talking about some of the advanced features of Matrix. So on the home screen, there's a couple of things that you'll want to be mindful of. Excuse me, sorry about that. Let's see here. Yeah, a couple of primary things that you'll want to be mindful of. So here on the Matrix home screen, there are these things called widgets or boxes here that you can kind of rearrange and customize to your liking. That's something we do cover in the basic class, so we're not going to spend time talking about it in the advanced class today. However, we do have a couple of these widgets that we want to focus in on during our class today. So that way we can kind of understand how they work and operate and how they differ from one another. So on my screen, the two that I'll be referencing today is the Market Watch tool and the Hot Sheets tool. Those are going to be the two we'll focus on. Of course, mine are in that left and right hand column respectively. Yours might be in a different location if you're choosing to follow along with me today. So it is important to notate where they are in reference to your own account, as they might be in a different place. And of course, these are movable. So you're welcome to change the position of them, place them wherever you'd like for them to go based on your usage and things like that. For me, I might throw Market Watch up there, Hot Sheets over here, and that way they're kind of stacked on top of one another. But that's one of the nice things about Matrix is it is totally customizable to you. So you are more than open to utilizing those customization features. So the first one we're going to talk about is this Market Watch tool. So Market Watch is a nice way to get a picture, a bigger picture of a smaller area. So it's a great way to kind of see how the market is functioning for whichever area you choose to specify. And you can also specify a time range and the property types that you're looking at statistics for. So these are just basically quick stats for the particular area that you've chosen. And the nice thing is it's totally interactive. So you can actually click on any one of these options. For example, if we just wanted to see new listings, we can click on that. And that gives us a search result list of new listings that have been put in the system. And of course, new listings will be dependent upon your definition of the time frame that you've put in. So this is just showing what's considered a new listing within the last however many days of the search that you've created using that tool. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. But it's worth noting that something is no longer considered new in our system by default after 14 days. So maximum 14 days on a new listing for it to have that status, if you will. So within the Market Watch tool, that is definitely something you'll want to keep in mind. So to get back to my homepage and get back to that tool, I'll need to click on either the My Matrix tab, hover over it and choose Home instead, or click on the MLS Technology Inc. logo in the upper left-hand corner. All three will bring us back to the same centralized place where we can then look over the Market Watch tool. So with the Market Watch, we'll want to ensure that we have the opportunity to adjust the property type and customize this a bit to our area. So for my example today, most of what I'll be using will just be the city of Tulsa, but you're welcome to use this with your own city or your own area as well. But we'll start by looking at residential properties over the last 3 days in the Tulsa area using our Market Watch tool. So to do that, we want to make sure from our property type that we have residential selected. It is worth noting, though, that you're not limited to residential in this option. You can choose commercial, land, lease, or cross property. And cross property, of course, being all of the above. So anything that encompasses one of the other property types would be considered cross property. So if you just wanted to see for the entire MLS what those numbers look like, you can hit cross property and you can see that within the last 7 days, according to the drop down that I have over to the right here, that there are 721 new listings in our MLS system. So that's quite a bit for 7 days. So here we'll choose residential, and we want to do a 3-day look at residential in the Tulsa area specifically. So to do that, we're going to have to go beyond what's available just on this widget itself and actually hit our customize text over to the bottom right of this square. By hitting that, that is going to give us an opportunity to further define the area that we're wanting to search within. So for this example, we're just looking within the city of Tulsa, but you can see that I have other area determinations that I can make here, including a map search. I can use the map to select an area if I wish. You can do it by school district, county, zip code, township range, or section. There's not subdivision as an option by default in here, which I think is interesting. However, you are more than welcome to add that as a field under the additional fields section and fully customize this tool to however you like. Now, in this case, we're just looking in the city of Tulsa. So all I need to do is put Tulsa here, hit save. And when I go back to my Market Watch tool for the entire city of Tulsa in the last 3 days, I will be able to see that there are 66 new listings, 1 coming soon, 14 back on market, and so forth. So technically speaking here, this is a tool that functions to allow you to see updates for the area that you're focused on. So if you're working within the Tulsa area, you can define it for Tulsa. If you just want to see statistics for the entire MLS, you're welcome to do that. It's completely and totally up to you. So whatever you'd like to do in terms of customizing that tool, you're welcome to do. If at any point, though, it's showing you limited to no data and you're concerned about why that might be the case, you can absolutely come down to the bottom right-hand corner after a customization has been made and hit this reset button. That will give you the opportunity to take it back to the default, and you can then view it for a more broader spectrum and then go back in and recustomize to your liking. So Market Watch tool, really handy, super customizable to you, and something that we like to talk about, of course, in our advanced matrix class. If anybody has any questions about it, let me know. For now, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next tool, but you guys are welcome to ask any additional questions that you'd like. So as I scroll down this center column here, we do have the Hot Sheets tool, and that is the next one that we'll be taking a look at. Now, the Hot Sheets tool is very similar to our Market Watch tool that we just covered. However, it functions in a slightly different way in terms of the way that it's viewing your, the way that you'll be viewing your results from it, and the way you'll be setting up your searches. So how I like to compare the two and contrast them a little bit is Market Watch and Hot Sheets both give you access to the same type of data. You're still going to be able to see new listings, change types, things like that that have been occurring on listings. However, Market Watch is intended to give you a general statistical look at the area that you're looking within. Hot Sheets is going to give you a much more detailed description of the type of change that's occurring on that particular property for any given criteria that you select, not limited to property type. You do have a default list of residential, commercial, land, lease, or cross property, much like you do with the drop down here in the Market Watch tool. However, with the Hot Sheets tool, each of those function a little bit differently. So for example, we can still choose a time frame down here. So we could do 3-day again. And then when we click on a residential link or something like that, oops, we'll get an error. That does happen from time to time. All right, there we go. We click on residential, we'll get an overview of the entirety of the residential listings over the last however many days. So when we go back to the beginning here, for the last 3 days, residential, it will show us all the change types that have occurred within residential. So we can see this first page is dedicated to new listings. If we go a little further down this, more new listings, when we get to the end here, eventually, we'll start seeing some different change types. So here we have price decreases. And what's notable about this, instead of it just being a price decrease as the change type, it will actually show you the information about that change. So in this case, it went from 289 to 285. So we can see that. Here's one that went from 389 to 369. So there's quite a few different changes here that we can see, and we can actually get some more detailed information about those changes from the Hot Sheet tool. All right, I'm going to take it back to the home page again here. Now, we do want to set up a customized search here to kind of give us an idea of how the tool functions with more detail. So to do that, we can hit customize in the bottom left of the hot sheets tile. And this will allow us to set or define the actual predefined settings that exist for each property type. But the nice thing about a hot sheet is it functions a little bit more like a saved search in the fact that you can build your own criteria, not limited to property type. So these are defaults that are set here for you. And if at any point it gets too murky or messed up, you can always hit restore to system defaults to get these 5 options back as the default for your hot sheet section. That can be really handy in case things get messed up. But in this case, you'll most likely either want to select one of these options and hit edit criteria to then specify a little further what type of change type you're looking for, what type of property type you're looking for, what the area of your search is, and some of the facts of that property. Or you can simply add a new one, which I will do here. And you'll start by defining the property type of that new one. So in this case, let's go back to our example of looking at change types for the Tulsa area over the last 3 days. Here, I'm going to select residential. And then the name that I'm going to give this is Tulsa RES. So that way we can see its residential properties in the Tulsa area. But I'm also going to hit a dash here, and I want to give it a particular change type. So for example, I only want to see properties in the Tulsa area that have decreased in price over a given amount of time. So if that's the case, I'm going to put price decrease. We'll save that. We'll click done here, as that will take us back into our hot sheets panel. And from here, we can select it. And we'll see that obviously we're still seeing new listings and nothing has really changed. And that's because the only thing that we defined was the name and the property type that we're looking at. So this is basically still the equivalent of hitting our residential hot sheet. So to give it some more customization, we're going to have to go back to our home page, hit customize once more. And this time when we select the predefined customizable one that we just added, we're going to highlight it and then hit edit criteria. Under this edit criteria section, this is where you're going to see you have access to a bit more detailed level of data. So if you wanted to get more specific, subdivisions actually built into this one. You also have your price and your MLS number and your facts and properties like that. But you do have a list of change types here to the left, and that is where the hot sheets tool is going to function a little bit differently than your market watch tool. Market watch, you're going to pick the change type you want to see, and you're just going to get an overview of those listings. This one, you're going to pick the change types that you want to see in one single comprehensive search. So for me, I just want to see price decreases over the last given amount of days, right? So that's it. All I have to do is select that as a change type, and then I can select the area as well, which in this case is just Tulsa, and then hit save, and then hit done. And now when I click on this as a hot sheet option, it will take me into a search of properties within the Tulsa area over the last given amount of time and the price decrease changes that have happened, and strictly those. So I'm only seeing the price decrease change for this particular property. I mean, for this particular area that I've selected, in this case, the city of Tulsa. You can also change that time frame. So if you only wanted to see what has decreased in price over the last 24 hours, when you click on this, it will give you the results for just that time frame. There's a little bit of a difference between the time frames for both of these tiles. So you'll notice that you have two options that sound very similar for both the Market Watch and the Hot Sheets tool. You have a 24-hour option and a today option. You also have a new only, this session, 24-hour or today for Hot Sheets. So the main difference between the 24-hour and today for both Hot Sheets and Market Watch is 24 hours is anything from 24 hours to the most recent hour. So for example, 10 is the most recent hour. So anything 24 hours ago from 10 a.m. So as of that time frame, you'll see any of that information that is listed. Today, however, is just from 12 a.m. this morning. So anything from 12 a.m. to current time. Now you'll notice that Hot Sheets has a couple of additional ones that MarketWatch doesn't have. That's this session and new only. This session refers to the amount of time that you've had Matrix open. So only things that have happened since you first opened Matrix, this session of Matrix. And then new only are only going to be things that have been input and are still considered by the system as new. So a little bit different in terms of those definitions. And then you can also just set up a custom range in the actual hot sheets section as well. You cannot do that with the MarketWatch tool. So those are the main key differences and overlaps between the two. Hot Sheets gives you access to much more detailed data than your MarketWatch tool, but the MarketWatch tool is a nice quick picture of the defined area that you're working within. So you're probably going to end up using both. MarketWatch functions better as an actual widget, so you can kind of just see the bar graphs and things like that. Hot Sheets functions better as an actual search tool. So it's going to depend greatly upon what you're wanting to achieve with those tools as to how you will inevitably end up using them. Do we have any questions about those tools before we move on to the next section? All right. Sounds good. So we'll move on to our next section here. So now we want to get into some of the advanced features available to you within the Matrix search, which is the bulk of the usage for Matrix. So to do that, we're going to head up to our search tab, and we're just going to use the example of residential. So we'll hover over residential and then click res. Now, immediately on this screen, that's pretty familiar to most of you. I'm sure you've probably used this particular search outline before, so hopefully nothing new here. However, there are a few buttons that you may have never paid attention to before, or maybe have never been shown before, or never needed to use before, that I'd like to kind of show here and explain. The first one that we'll talk about here is at the very bottom, and it's this additional fields button. We do cover this a little bit in our basic usage class, but the key here is you can actually add any field from the existing available fields in Matrix. There's 350 something fields that we use to document listing data, and you do have the option to search by any given field that you choose. So if we hit add or remove in this section, we do have access to the entire comprehensive list of data fields available within our MLS. And that's quite a large list. So you might want to benefit from using this search widget at the bottom here. For example, maybe you want to add public remarks as one of the fields that you're going to search through. And this is one that's pretty common for a lot of agents, especially if they're not certain if there's a field that's dedicated to a certain feature, but they want to just see if it was a feature that got mentioned in the public remarks of the listing. That's perfectly fine. You can definitely do this by adding the public remarks, or by selecting the public remarks field from the left and clicking add in the middle. It will send this as an additional field or selected field over to the right here. You can see I got an error because it's already one that I have selected here. But just like you can add them from left to right, you can also remove them from right to left. Either way will actually get you what you need. So hit back here. Once you hit back and you have the selected fields that you wish, they will appear under this additional field section for you to utilize for searching purposes. So here in the public remarks, we could type in asterisk and the term mature trees, and that would give us access to a search for the public remarks through, for a search through the public remarks for the phrase mature trees. There's a few other options available to you as well for those additional fields, but it's really going to come down to what you think is best for your needs in terms of those searching. And additionally, there's another button here that I want to point out that you guys may have never noticed, and that's actually towards the top of your quick res search. Over to the right-hand side, there's a little settings cog over here to the right. and you can click on this to set or store default search values in your criteria fields. So you can actually set currently selected search criteria starting default. So by default, system-wide, if you've never ever touched that button before, the only thing that should ever be checked when you enter a quick residential search is the active status. That's the only field that's ever filled out by default. That being said, if you want to save yourself time and go forward with a particular set of criteria, this is similar to a saved search in that it will lock in what criteria you're using and set it to your default each time. The setback to this, of course, being that if you have a client that ends up not using that criteria that you're searching with, that will leave you with clearing out fields each time you come into this quick search section. And that's going to create more work for yourself if you don't use those. But you do have the option, though, if you always are searching in the Tulsa area, for example, or you're always searching for more than just the active status, or there's some other type of search that you're doing that always has some criteria locked in, you can actually set it as a starting default right here in this section. Or also, if you want to override the default active being checked, maybe you just want to uncheck it, so that way you can come in and remind yourself to always select the proper statuses. You can come in here and set that as a default as well. Otherwise, if this is a function that you've tried to implement, but it's just not working for you, or it's causing frustration, you can always restore to the system search defaults, which is, again, just having that active box checked. So let's hop into a quick example search here and take a look at some other additional advanced features that you may have available for your access here in Matrix. So for me, I'm going to pretend that I have a buyer's client who's looking to purchase a property in the heart of Tulsa, and they've given me some criteria here. So for that example, I'm going to just fill in the city of Tulsa. Over to our right, the price range is 200 to 300. Our bedroom count is 3+. Our bathroom count is 2+. Our living area, house square feet is going to be 1,200+. And you want something built after 1980, so we're going to put 1980+ as well. Okay, so fairly general there. We know that this is going to be in the newer part of Tulsa, since it's going to be anything after 1980. We can definitely see that we've got that city selected and some of the basic criteria for the search. Now, there's a couple of other detailed factors that we might be able to throw in during the search, but ultimately the point of this search is to kind of show you some advanced features. So for now, we're going to keep it simple with these criterias and hit our results button. Now, when we hit our results button, we're going to get a list of around 61 listings here that we can sort through and start to look through for our client. So this is where, we're going to look through some of these properties. We might click on the MLS number and see some of the photos, see if it's going to be a good fit for our client, see what, if that's what they're looking for. We can always go back to our single line display and change the sorting. So that's obviously something we don't cover a ton in the basic matrix usage. But if you don't want to sort by status and school district, maybe you want to do it by status and price instead. You simply can prioritize the price over the other fields. And whichever field you click on, of course, will decide the default sorting that you're going to be using. Additionally, across the top here, it's important to note a few different things about how this is lined out. This may be something that you guys haven't ever had to really think about. Most of the time, you're going to hop into this, and then within a couple of minutes, if it's generating the results that you want, probably set up an auto email. And if you're on the buyer's perspective there, that's about all you need. You're good to go from there. However, there are a couple of additional advanced things here that are important to note. So firstly, you can navigate from page to page at the top here using your previous and next buttons, or you can do it at the bottom using the actual links. So that's something we don't take a ton of time to cover in our basic class, but there are two ways to navigate through those results. You can also select multiple results on a page, on a single page, by clicking the checkbox in this upper left-hand corner. That's going to actually select everything on that page. And then if you go to the next page, you won't see that additional things have been selected there. But it will just be for that first page of information. You can select everything there, or you can also uncheck everything using the same box at the top left. You also have your count of total results as they appear per page on the top. So 1 to 25 results of a total of 61 results. You can also see how many you have selected using this checked count. Now over to the right here, we can actually check, uncheck all or none or all of the ones on a single page using these links at the top. So if we wanted to select all 61 results, we can hit this all button. That will check every single result for us. So we can see now if we go to the next page, that has selected everything for us. We can also uncheck all of our results by selecting none at all. And that works even if we've only selected a handful of them, but we can't figure out like what page we're viewing them on. You know, it says we have 4 checked. Maybe I see them on this page, but maybe they're not all on one page, right? So we're not sure. By hitting none, it will clear that selection for us. And then much like using this checkbox at the upper left-hand corner here, we can just uncheck or recheck everything on this individual page using the page option there. Continuing along this banner across the top, you actually have the option to choose the type of display that you're looking at for these listings. So if you just wanted to hop into Agent Full with all photos, for example, that's another way to just get into a single page view of your first result and clicking through next, navigating through each of those listings. That's perfectly reasonable as well. You can also return to your single line display by clicking this display option and choosing the single line option from this selection. It's going to be usually towards the bottom of your list, and that will bring you back to the single line display. That being said, anytime you click on an MLS number, that single line display becomes a text option at the top for you to return back to the grid view. So at any point, you can navigate between the two, either using that display dropdown or the text at the top. To the right of that is how many results you want to view per page, which can also be really handy if you have more than 25 results and you want to see them all on a single page. You can definitely do that by adjusting this count per page. So for example, we have 61 results. Maybe we want to go ahead and change this to 100, and that way we can see all 61 of our results on a single page. That gives us the option to actually view all of our results without having to click next to go to a different page, and check or uncheck all of them using the box at the top left. The last thing to keep in mind, the last couple things to keep in mind on this bar is we can actually create our own custom displays. The way that that works is using these column sortings, adding or removing columns. So we need to talk a little bit about how that works here for just a moment. So across the top, we have MLS number, status, subtype, school district address. We have lots of helpful fields here that give us access to immediate data, but there's tons and tons of data that we can view on this single line display that's available to us here in Matrix. So we don't even have to go into the individual listings. We can just add different columns and view those data points here in the actual listing data. So for example, we might want to make some room. We can adjust our column size by waiting for the mouse icon to turn to these two kind of black arrows pointing away from one another. That will shrink the size of the columns that we don't think are as important or aren't going to be as important when we get into some of the sorting here. And one of the fields maybe I want to see in this view is the subdivision, for example. Like I just want to see where these properties are appearing. And if they are all relatively in the same subdivision or in the same area, we can definitely view that as a column in this list. All we have to do is turn our cursor to these 4 pointing arrows on one of the gray spaces of one of the existing columns. So in my case here, I want the subdivision to appear as a value to the right of my address column. So between address and bedroom count there. So I'm going to click on the address column's empty blank space, and then choose, you'll see that I get a drop down that allows me to do some additional things. So firstly, I can change the pixel width, which is similar to what we did by dragging these kind of arrow columns here. Or you can always hit auto fit and it will automatically resize it to make sure that every value is fitting with that option. You can also change the alignment of this field. So for example, if you have text that needs to be centered or justified to the right, you can definitely do that. And we'll see if I do right here and hit apply, that's actually going to change the address over to the right-hand side. So this makes it a little bit easier for me to view in some instances. Maybe I want it to be centered in that view. This is a really good way to kind of customize how that's going to look. You can also use this wrap line option. And when you hit apply, if this shrinks to a smaller size, it will make that line wrap so that it stacks on top of itself, which can be really beneficial with this address field specifically if it has just too much data in there. The caveat to that, of course, being that with this address field, it may look a little cluttered, so it's going to depend again on what works best for you. But nonetheless, we're still looking to add the subdivision field as an option. So to do that, we can click on this space again and choose to insert column. And from that column, we can actually search for subdivision, highlight it, hit apply, and that will add the subdivision as a column for us to view. Now we can see that subdivision field, and in this one, we might want to go ahead and wrap lines, and some of these were pretty long. There we go. Now we can see what the subdivision is for that property. And we can kind of see that some of these are Mitchell Park here. There's High Point, there's Wagon Wheel. There's some that are unplatted, Oakleaf, Battle Creek Park. So we can definitely see all the subdivision names that we need access to in this option. We could also do this for some other helpful information, such as maybe a listing agent. Maybe we just want to see who the agent is in this view for that particular MLS. Maybe I want that to appear as the first column, so I know who to contact immediately if I like a particular listing for my client. Well, here I can choose insert column above the numbered values here, the result values. I can do listing agent. Maybe it's just list agent. List agent. There it is. List agent full name. That's what I'm looking for. Hit apply. And there is the listing agent full name. So I have access to that bit of info now. So that way I know who to contact if I need to for this particular property. So as we can see, there's a lot of helpful different tools that we can use. And let's say, for example, we always want that subdivision and listing agent full name to be a value that we see when we're doing a search. Well, just like I was talking about or referring to with the default view on the criteria page, we can do much the same with this results page. All we have to do is hit Manage Display and give it a name. So for this example, we might say list agent with sub for the subdivision, and we can hit save as a copy, and that locks that display in this dropdown as an option for us to always use in the future. So we can go back and change it. So again, by default here, our single line might not show us the fields that we want. So let's go ahead and remove these columns real quick, since those are not part of the default. All right, so this is our basic single line. Once again, we don't have the subdivision or agent view that we want. But now if we choose single line, or now if we choose this display dropdown and we find our list agent with sub, agent name with sub here, we can select that and it will add those fields back to the view for us. So we don't have to worry so much about that view. The other thing is we can also just set this as the default. So anytime we're viewing properties moving forward, we're going to be viewing that bit of data. To do that, we'll hit the cog and we'll set my current display, sort order, and count per page as the search starting default. You can then always reset to the system search defaults if needed. But setting that to default means you don't even have to select it as your display option moving forward. Even if it doesn't show it, it should still include those columns with the sorting that you've chosen to prioritize and your count per page. So all of that gets locked in as the default. Nice, handy little stuff to know for your matrix reasons. There's also some additional tools here that you may not be as familiar with, things that we don't typically cover in our basic matrix usage class. So, and also a friendly reminder if you're already using some of those items as well. The one thing I do like to spend a little time on too during this section at least is a tool that we never talk about very often in the basic usage. So give me just a moment here to get this squared away. So one of the tools that we don't spend a ton of time on is actually here towards the bottom of our screen, and it's this carts tool. So carts can actually be really handy. They're sort of like creating a shopping list on Amazon, where you're going to add individual items that you like. And they may not necessarily be relative to one another. They don't have a ton of things in common. You can pull them and conglomerate them from different searches. But carts is a feature that works much the same here in Matrix. So, for example, you already have saved searches, you have auto emails, and those are all pulling results that are based on the same criteria that you've entered, right? So they either share a city in common or they're sharing some area of your search or some value that's the same. Carts don't require any of that. They're just a conglomeration of listings that you create. So in this example, if we want to create a new cart, we can give it a name and we'll say properties that I like maybe. And you can create carts for individual contacts. But in this case, we're just picking out things that we as an agent like. So we don't have to save it to a contact here. We can just save the cart and that will allow us to add to this cart. So for example, we don't have any properties that exist in this cart currently. But let's look at some of these photos. Maybe that property is one that we like. We'll select it. Let's grab another one here and see. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Maybe that's one that we like. Can't remember. Was that the one I just looked at? Nope. That'll work though. That's fine. Maybe I should select one before I look at it. There we go. That's good. So these are just, properties. And of course, these do share the same search criteria because we're still using that 200 to 300,000, 3+ bedroom, 2+ bath, 1,200+ square feet in the Tulsa area. So all of these fit within that criteria. But let's say, for example, I go ahead and save these to my cart. There are now properties that appear in this cart that I can go back and look at later. But let's say that I go back to my home page. That search is done. We go back to residential quick res. Let's create a completely different search. So in this case, we'll do Broken Arrow. And we'll look at properties that are between 500 and 600 that have a total of 5+ baths and 3+ full baths and have a minimum square feet of 2,000+. Okay. And when we hit results, there we're going to get some additional properties here. So let's say, okay, we like that one, right? That's pretty good. If we like this one too, yeah, that looks pretty nice, right? So we're just grabbing a few properties that really fit our aesthetic in this case, but we're grabbing a couple of additional items here, going to carts, selecting properties that I like, hitting add to, and now all of those properties we selected have been added to the other 4. So you can see they don't share the same criteria. These are completely different properties in a completely different area with a different price range, different bedroom, bathroom count, different square foot count, but they're properties that you like. That's what they have in common, right? So you're throwing them under this cart because they're something that you can go back and use later. So there's not a ton of reasons that you'll be using this feature, right? Let's just be completely honest here. There's not a ton of reasons that you'll be using it unless it's for your own personal purposes. Or if you have a client who just can't decide, they just like looking at pretty homes, but they're really not sure what their criteria is. That might be a good reason to throw a cart in and assign it to them. The nice thing about carts too is your clients don't see the carts. This is something you're creating for your purposes on your side. So at any point, you can go back to that cart and show it to your client later. The nice thing is with carts as well is if you're on the go and you're a mobile agent who uses your phone a lot, uses your tablet a lot, it's always on your laptop, and you're just out in the field doing work. If that's the case, carts can be really handy for you if you drive by a property, pull it up on MLS, and your cart could be the theme of the cart could be properties I need to look at later, right? That might be, view later. It's like watch later on YouTube, but view later on these properties, right? You can add it to your view later cart, and then when you come back, boom, you've got a list of properties that you interacted with at some form or fashion throughout the day that you were driving. So don't do that while you're driving, of course. Cannot advise that. But properties that you can interact with later, right? That might be a good use for carts. Nonetheless, though, it is a feature that's underutilized. We like to talk a little bit about it in Advanced Matrix, just as a reminder that it is there for you to use if you need it. So a couple of other quick things, though, I want to touch on here that aren't necessarily advanced features, but they're definitely things to keep in mind. So let me go back to that initial search that I did. One of the first things here that's helpful about this example is a reminder that recent searches are saved over to the right-hand side of your screen. And it will either do the last 30 or save it for a week, which is 5 business days, I believe. So any search that you've done within the last 5 days will appear in this list so long as there are less than 30. Otherwise, it'll just be the last 30 that you've done. But in this case, we can go back to our actual view that we did for the, where was it? Here we go. Residential active in Tulsa between 200 and 300,000. When you hover over it, it reminds you of that criteria you used, which is really helpful. And I can hop back in to view the results of that search. It even reselects the items I had selected, which is really nice. But for me, I'm going to uncheck those for now. So going back to our search view here, let's pretend this was something we had just done for our buyer, and we're needing to generate some stats on just the comprehensive amount of properties we have. So we've got 61 results here, and we just want to get like an average idea of what pricing is for the area of our search. We can see very clearly that we're in the city of Tulsa, and with the city of Tulsa having so many unique areas, the prices may be all over the map on these properties. We know that they're going to at least be between 200 and 300,000 though. That's because they're limited by our search values of 200 to 300. But maybe we still want to get a statistical average or median of each of these results for whatever reason, right? If that's the case, that might give our buyer client an idea of what they're going to spend for a property in this range, most likely. A decent property in this range. So we can actually get access to that under the Actions section. If we select Stats and we choose Tabular, which is the second option, that will take the total listings in this search results panel, which in this case, it's only showing 59, which I think is strange. I don't know if that's because a couple of them are not considered. I'm not sure why that is. That's weird, but anyway, ideally, it's going to pull in the total number of results that you have in this search view. And from there, you'll actually be able to see the average numbers of each of those values. So you'll see a minimum of 200,000, a maximum of 300,000 is the list price for these, an average of 271, and a median of 275. So this is for your buyers, you're probably not going to need to know this information, but when you're doing comps, this might be a really helpful tool to keep in mind. Those tabular averages and numbers are available for you to access for any search values, and they're not really limited to the amount of properties you have in your actual results page. So that can be really, really helpful as well. You can also just print this out. When you hit print, it's just going to generate this as a flat number with the criteria you used, right? So it reminds your client of what that actually looks like. So all of that can actually be really, really beneficial for your statistical purposes or needs. There's also a statistical charts option, which we do cover in our more advanced statistical class. If you're interested in taking that, creating relevant market reports, I believe, is the name of that course that we've recently started to implement here. So if you're interested in the stats view of tools that we have available, the stats suite that we have available within Matrix and without Matrix, check that class out in your free time. It's very, very handy. Okay, so helpful reminder, there are a couple of newer things that have been added to Matrix over the last year and a half or so, and I always like to show those off in our Advanced Matrix class as well. The first one being this access to the MLS OK system. At the top right of my tab list, I have MLS OK as an option. Some of you, depending on your resolution or screen size, might only see add, edit, and then more, or finance and then more. If you hover over more, MLS OK will be one of the drop-down options for you. But either way, when we select that, that will bring us to the view for the Oklahoma City MLS. So we'll actually be in their matrix system, and this will allow us the opportunity to search through their system for properties in their service areas. So for example, if we wanted to search for a property in Edmond, we're going to do this search in both systems. So here I'm going to do residential quick, and I'm looking for properties in the Edmond area. So I'm going to start with, let's see, the city, and we're going to do Edmond. Okay. And we're going to give ourselves a price range of 200 to 300,000. And we're going to give ourselves a square foot minimum of 1,200 with a bedroom bathroom count of 3 plus, 2 plus, respectively. And something that was built after 1980. Okay. So looking pretty good for that so far. When we hit results, we're going to get 137 matches in the Edmond area. We can look through them and actually start to find out what properties our client might be interested in. Over here in Matrix, in our version of Matrix, if we do that same search, we'll notice that the results are quite a bit different. So let's say, for example, Edmond. Let's do 200 to 300,000. 3 plus bedrooms, 2 plus baths. Minimum square feet of 1,200. When we hit our, oh yeah, you're built 1980 plus. I mean, I can already tell you from the numbers I'm seeing over there, we've got nothing. So when we hit results, no Edmond results at all. Now that doesn't mean, of course, that there are no listings available in that area. It simply means that any agent that doubles in both the MLS OK system and our system has not chosen to enter those listings into our system. And honestly, many of the results that we're seeing on the Oklahoma City side actually may not be double agents, right? So agents that exist in both MLS OK and MLS Tech's service area. If that's the case, there is no prohibition, meaning it's not against our rules for them to list in our system. They're welcome to create a duplicate in our system. That's fine. And the same is true for their system. If they have something listed in the Tulsa area, then they are welcome to list it in their system as well. So for example, maybe we want to change this from Edmond to Tulsa in their system. Of course, we're going to see 0 matches for their system, but we do the same for ours, and that's going to give us quite a bit more to look at. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know why that's happening. It's very strange, Tulsa. Huh. Well, we did just do this search, so we know there are obviously some results. That must be kind of a glitch. Let's try refreshing. Oh, wait, I've got it in MLS numbers. Oh, goodness. That makes sense. There we go. Wow. Much better. Yeah, 58 matches for that here. If we do Edmond again, though, that is just going to give us 1. So there actually is 1 result for the Edmond area for that value. There's none for the Tulsa area in their system, unfortunately. But as you can see here, That listing is 16209 Iron Tree, so we might probably see that same result here. Maybe not. I don't know if I want to look through all of these results, but just for my address, maybe. I said I wasn't going to do it, and here I am doing it. Anyway, not the point, but you can kind of see how that works from there. It is currently 11, so if I could get everyone who stuck it out to hit that raise hand button for me one more time, just to ensure that you have made it to the end of class and can ensure that you receive that CE credit, go ahead and hit that raise hand button for me, and then you will be free to dismiss from class. So I do appreciate you all so much for your attendance today, and I sincerely hope that you have learned something or been reminded of some cool features within Matrix. So yep, as you head out, make sure please to hit that raise hand button to ensure that you receive CE credit for today's course. And yes, it is true, even if you did chime in at the beginning, but you're unable to at the end, that CE credit does not grant to your profile. So please ensure that you have hit that raise hand button for me, and we will be good to go.